It's the first one I've been to in Dallas.
Tight ends. Where are you guys staying at? Downtown here?
Up by me, I don't know. Over in like Las
well, they can
Colinas
go to
area.
Moxie's.
Okay, because the
Well,
one
yeah,
I've been to is over by off
Moxie's
Sam
would be
Rayburn
good.
Tollway 121.
Not for
Yeah, I think
barbecue.
that was the
but
other one.
like
I think
Grand
there's three.
Is
in,
there?
like in that
and
specific
just so
area?
you know, we're
but-
probably live already. He thinks this
we
is
are.
funny.
No,
We're
we are.
actually
He-
live
he actually
right
told us
now.
that time.
He gave
Okay.
us a snap, though,
He gave
because
us a
we have
symbol.
a guest. Look who it is. It's Ryan Johnston here. We'll tell you all about who he is, why he's here. Well, there he is. He's the Bruins
Are you gonna tell
play-by-play
him-
broadcaster for
Are you
their
going to let the
radio.
cat out of the bag? He's
What's-
Wyatt's dad or no?
I mean, we should talk about it.
It's my Canadian cousin.
Yeah.
That's right.
Okay.
Don't call him Johnson. It's Johnston. I'm sure he's heard that 1,000 times a year. Ryan's here. Of course, we have Luds and Sam. Our producer, John Anderson, who is a Boston native, is over the moon that we have a Bruins legend already in the making. Let's get started on the DLS Dallas Stars podcast. We're at practice today, getting ready for another big showdown between the Stars and Bruins on Thursday. While Sam and I do all that work, by the way, Sam's on the other side of the camera today. Here's what happened previously on the DLS Dallas Stars.
They haven't been a fast-starting team since Craig Ludwig was on the roster. Let's call it what it is. Like,
I mean,
There's a
that's
reason for that.
That's a couple
Like,
decades
the-
ago.
In the
Before.
moment, Sam. I'm being in the
Before.
moment.
But you're not. You're talking about what Owen said yesterday.
Thank you.
Oh, jeez.
If I could drop
No,
this mic,
I don't know
I
what
would
that
drop
whole
it.
hold. It would
Oh yeah, I don't
fit.
do what you do. I do the opposite because
Why?
then it annoys people. Like
Come on, you.
then they
I
get
tried
a
to
face
give
that
Sam
you
a
have.
fist bump because he stood up for me, and it literally took his hands and
Stick
awkwardly.
shift.
No, that's gross. It is Wednesday, November 13th. This is the DLLS Dallas Stars podcast. We are live today from our lounge studios, and we have a guest. Alongside Craig Ludwig, Sam Nestler, I'm Owen Newkirk. Our producer, John Anderson, is here, and we are thrilled to have the new voice on the radio side, play-by-play for the Boston Bruins. Ryan Johnston is here. And Ryan, this is your first trip to Dallas as you sort of start to learn the National Hockey League circuit. You're not new to hockey, and we'll get into that, but it's got to be a really, in this whole first year of being an NHL play-by-play guy, which is exciting enough, to be able to go around and see all the buildings and learn the cities. I'm sure your second trip will be even better because you'll now know where you want to go.
Right.
But it's got to be just so much fun to be learning the league outside of Boston for the first time.
It really is. We've been a lot of places I've never been before already. I mean, we've been to Toronto, we've been to Denver, we've been to Utah. Spent 3 days in Salt Lake City. It doesn't get more exciting than that. But it's been great. You know, got to see Nashville for the first time and get the experience Broadway. So, you know,
Did you get a day off in there too to go out in a little bit? Or?
we had an extra day there. So
It's a good
there are
place to
worse
have an
places
extra
in the
day.
world to have 2 days.
How many names did you screw up the next night?
Yeah, it was not my finest hour probably. But,
Good.
no,
you had a
been-
good time.
It's been a lot of fun.
It's funny you mentioned Toronto because I haven't heard you call a game in a little while, and I'll get into that. But I happened to be in the car the night you guys were in Toronto, and we had just done a thing about the day before. Bruins haven't played well. They've got to go in and do a statement game. Austin Matthews is hurt. He's not going to be there. And I tuned in through the app in my car. It was, I think, third period, and it was 4-0 Leafs. And I didn't even know what the score was. But when I tuned in, your voice sounded like you were not very happy, right? And there's an emotion that went, what's going on? Usually Ryan's pretty fired up for the game. I wonder if it's, oh no.
I was really fired up for about a period and a half in that one. After that, it kind of went downhill fast.
Were
But-
you a Bruins fan coming into this, or?
So I've lived in Boston for 24 years. So I have kind of adopted.
You
the
have
Bruins.
to be a Bruins fan then?
I worked for their flagship station for 15 years.
Okay.
So yeah, it was good for business at first, but I really fell in love with the team, the 2011 team that won the cup, and I've been diehard ever since.
By the way, this shirt, it's right in the middle of our shot. That is one that John, our producer, wears a couple times a week. Maybe
can
he has
smell
more
it.
than one. And
Can tell.
before you got here, that was placed on there. Letty was going to move it because he thought it'd be near
No, Letty
you,
was
but
gonna burn
This
it,
was
but-
intentional to make you feel more welcome. So it's not just Stars, Cowboys, Mavs, Rangers all over the place.
Appreciate that.
But
Do you feel more welcome?
do you feel
I feel very welcome.
It is a really, we went all out for you. We spared no expense.
We really hung it to the rafters.
Should we just lay
Sorry,
out on top of
fans.
that one?
Let's
That kinda
wanted to
looks like
burn
it's
it.
gonna
I
get
wanted to
raised.
burn it, just so you know. They wouldn't let me burn it.
So for those of you that are, of course, mostly watching as Dallas Stars fans, you probably don't necessarily know the connection. And Ryan and I met, it was a long time ago now. I would say we're getting closer to 16, 17 years ago. So you were in Lowell calling for the Devils at the time. And I had to be careful because they used to be the Lock Monsters, but they were the Lowell Devils when I started in my first AHL job with the Albany River Rats. And then the team moved on you.
Yes.
And that, from then until you get the Bruins job, how much play-by-play were you actually doing?
Not that much. I was doing as much as I could. I had multiple jobs going at the same time. I was in Lowell, Massachusetts. I actually stuck around that area. I was doing political talk radio during the week, and then on the weekends, I was working for the Bruins flagship station, the Sports Hub, and I got a chance in 2011. Actually, before that, I did some Boston College games. We did a couple of years worth of like Friday night game of the week for BC. And then in 2011, I got a call that Dave Gosher, who's now in Las Vegas, his father unfortunately had passed away, and they needed me to fill in, and I got 4 Bruins games. That was my foray into the NHL.
That was your debut.
That was my debut.
Man.
And for those who will remember, the Bruins beat Montreal 8-6 in a game that featured about 190 penalty minutes. Line brawls. Tim Thomas fought Carey Price. That was my NHL debut. And
awesome.
It was amazing. But from that, I started picking up more college games. I got a chance to fill in a few more times over the years, and just hope that someday maybe the call would come. And it happened to come this September.
And it's interesting, too, because if I'm not mistaken, didn't you get a couple of trial games the year they hired Judd for radio? They had you, I think Adam Kaufman, a couple others were doing some of the preseason games when they were trying to figure out who they were going to hire.
Yeah,
And
so that was when Dave went to Vegas, and it was 2017. They had 4 of us each call a preseason game, and that was kind of the on-site audition as they tried to figure out who it was going to be. And Judd ended up getting the job. I worked alongside him and Bob Beers, who's my color guy now. We do a Saturday morning hockey show on the Sports Hub, so we've been working together every week ever since.
What was your experience in college? I'm a big college hockey fan. I can imagine that was a lot of fun.
It was. College around Boston is, it's a lot of fun, and there's a lot of teams, obviously. So I did a couple of years of BC games, like I said. I've worked for UMass Lowell, for Merrimack College, UNH. Whoever wanted to bring me in for a weekend to call some games, I was willing to do it. And I've also gotten a chance to do some Hockey East championships, the Beanpot tournament a few times, which is a lot of fun. And so that's really kind of kept me in it as far as the play-by-play goes, and kept my game up to snuff as best I could.
How many years did you do college hockey?
Off and on, really, since 2009. So
You probably had Jake and Casey Ottinger and Casey DeSmith are both Hockey East guys.
UNH and BU.
I think I definitely saw Jake play once or twice over the games that I covered. Again, kind of bouncing around. You see some of them you just hear tale of, but yeah, I definitely remember Jake.
I'm curious because I did some of this stuff, and I hated the prep work because you play forever and you think you know everybody, and then all of a sudden you got to do it live, and I quickly learned I didn't know a damn thing about 3/4 of the players. Does your prep change from college to doing any pro team? The Bruins, I guess does it change for you at all?
I go about it a little bit the same way, although I got to say in the NHL, it's a lot easier to watch game film. It's all available online. You can see everything. And so that has helped. But my preparation is basically the same. It's just learning a whole new crop of players. I was talking to Beersy this morning, and this first time through the league, I'll get a chance to see Dallas for the second time tomorrow night, but I've had a chance to see Toronto a couple times, Florida a couple times, but the other teams I'm seeing fresh. First time that I'm seeing most of these guys live. And that's different because you start to pick up, once you see those players, you start to pick up on nuances in their game, where they tend to be on the ice. It makes it a little bit easier to prepare. And so the teams that we'll see 3-4 times during the year, look forward to those games in the second half.
Do you watch, like, say you're playing Dallas? Would you go and watch a previous game to catch up on the opposing team?
Yeah,
then?
I'll probably do some of that at the hotel tonight. Didn't get a chance to coming in last night late, but I'll pop on there last.
I know a couple spots if you want to go watch. they'll have it rerunning. I don't know how much you're going to retain, but
well, yeah, I'll tell you what, I'm interested to see that absolute thrashing they gave Pittsburgh the other night. So.
It's a lot more fun than the Winnipeg game on Saturday.
Yeah,
so
a little
you want
different.
to see good Stars, don't watch the Saturday game. It's funny you mention that because building your broadcast site boards from scratch takes so much more work.
Yeah.
Right? The prep that you're talking about, Lutz. When you see a team again in the same season, or if you built up multiple years, then you're just plugging in and playing the ones that new players, or just fine tuning. It's so much more time consuming to start from zero with a new team. And I've done it, especially recently with my FC Dallas stuff. You see the same team a couple of times. Boy, that second time it's just like, oh, this is so much easier and I can do it in less time. But that first time, it'll take days.
Yeah, it does. So my previous experience, you mentioned calling a preseason game. We did 4 out of the 7 preseason games this year. And that was, I'm trying to get up to speed because I didn't get officially named to the job until like 3 days before training camp opened. And so I'm trying to meet as many players as, there's 50 guys in camp, and I'm trying to meet as many of them as I can and get some background info on them all. And then one of the games that we did was against the Rangers. So you got basically 50 guys in the Boston camp. You got basically 50 guys in the New York camp. And Peter Laviolette doesn't let a lot of information out, even in the preseason about who's going to dress. So there I am, the morning of the game. I'm sitting at home and I'm on Twitter watching little clips that some of the New York reporters are posting of who's on the ice for the Rangers at their practice facility, because I'm checking those guys off going, he's not coming, he's not coming, he's not. Because if they're on the ice there, they're not in Boston.
Yeah.
Oh.
And so that's how I was trying to figure out, because my prep sheet has room for about 23 players on it, because that's usually more than enough.
That's the max roster.
And so, trying to figure out who among the 50 you need to have ready to go for game time. And I think even the off-ice officials came over that night about an hour before the game. Said, do you have any idea who's dressing the night for New York? They didn't have it. They didn't have it yet.
That's unbelievable.
It's hard for your own team. Like, we were at practice, and I'm like, who's that guy? Who's that guy? Because you have 50 faces, and so it's hard for your own team. I can imagine it's even harder going in and trying to call a game.
You got guys who are,
team.
who are destined for juniors, who are maybe playing in those preseason games. Like they're not even really under contract yet, and it's like they're here, and you got to be ready for it.
All right, this is one that Lutz was talking to us about before today. How have you adjusted to NHL travel versus what we used to do in the AHL?
especially per diem.
Well,
Adjusted might be the wrong word.
You're not going to Hardee's.
I tell you, in Lowell, we were unbelievably lucky as far as travel went. We spent maybe 10, 15 nights a year on the road because our schedule was so division heavy, and all of the division games were within an hour and a half or 2 hour drive. So it was drive up, do the game, drive back. And so, we weren't pocketing a lot of per diem on a lot of those trips, unfortunately, but it was fairly easy. This has been a real adjustment. It's been an adjustment for me. It's been an adjustment for my wife, not having me around. But I mean, you can't complain about it. I mean, we're staying in the nicest hotels in every city. We're flying on charters. We talk about the prep work. A lot of that's getting done on the airplane. When I get on the plane last night, I fire up the laptop. We're an hour and a half flight from St. Louis. I'm working the entire time. By the time I land, I'm almost ready to call the game at that point.
I love the line they call the NHL the Never Hungry League because of all the available food options on the charter flights.
It's crazy. I'm trying to be very good. Limit, what I intake on the road especially, but it's
hard to say no to free.
It's
isn't
not
it?
easy. It's not easy. When they come around, it's like, oh, can we get you a steak, sir? It's like, geez, it's midnight. Maybe I shouldn't.
Sounds tough.
Yeah.
Luds, was that the same when you were playing? It has to have been an upgrade as far as the amount of food on. Do they serve?
We didn't even get peanuts.
That's what I'm saying. Like,
No.
they didn't have.
We had the
catered meals.
Yeah, in Montreal we did, but we would we'd go to liquor stores and you could put some beers in your bag. Are we talking food or just do you guys care?
Anything.
Oh.
Just like
Yeah,
on the
no,
plane.
you had to get your own stuff. We took normal flights too,
You were
and
flying commercials,
but we
still.
were always in the back. That was a mistake.
Right by the bathroom.
Right by the beer cart. The Stewies. It was all back there, and they were, they were very liberal with what they were giving you, and so it led to a few bus rides when you got off the plane and you're trying to find your hotel and stuff because some guys were lit, and I'm sitting there, 22 or 20 whatever it was. I'm like, this ain't what I thought it was like. Like, this is more in my wheelhouse.
You got to work hard to get
We've
lit on
gotta
a
do-
1 hour flight.
Hey, put this in your memory bank, Sam.
Okay.
We have to do a Ludscapades of airport travel with the Montreal Canadiens or the Minnesota North Stars or Dallas Stars because they actually had layovers in airports. And I've seen some things guys would do and play games they would play, $100 bill on fishing line and stuff like that. So let's make sure, because Ryan's here, we got to talk about Bruins and Stars and stuff.
I got to tell you a quick story.
Please.
Right, while we're talking about flying commercial flights. So in the American League, we would go up to Newfoundland once or twice a year for a weekend series, which was a great spot. If you ever get a chance to go, I love it up there.
I loved it too. It was really fun.
A lot of smoking going on in my day up in them bars.
But we
George Street.
Oh,
we were up there one time, and we played a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday started the AHL All-Star break. So we had one guy who had to go to like Wilkes-Barre to go to the All-Star. Everybody else was off for the next few days. So on Saturday night after the game, we're not flying out till Sunday morning. The whole team goes out and just absolutely tears it up. It's like a 5 a.m. bus to the airport. It's a bright, before the sun comes up, we got to get on the bus. Guys are rolling into the hotel at 4:45, running upstairs, grabbing their gear and jumping on the bus. So the flight out of, I think we were flying to through Halifax or someplace like that on the way back. It's like a 36-seat jet coming out of St. John's. So we've got 23 players or ish, me, couple of coaches, trainers. There's 30 of us in the traveling party. And then there's 5 or 6 actual regular human beings on this plane as 25 just absolutely hungover, smelling like smoke and beer hockey players come stumbling onto the flight. I remember our coach walking onto the plane, taking one look around, and he just busted out laughing because everybody just looked like absolute hell.
That's hilarious. It's probably better. They probably weren't even hungover yet, so it's probably worse because they were still going. Still loud.
And those were back in the days when you had to maybe move a bigger guy around to balance the plane a little bit. We are going to talk more to Ryan about the Bruins because they have been the never disappoint drama team so far this year. Let's get into it next year on the DLLS Dallas Stars podcast.
Talk about Roback from my new seat here where I don't even know which camera to look at. This one, I guess. Roback, activewear, quite simple, best fit, best feel, quality of gear speaks for itself. Their performance polos perform better in the heat than any other polo. They are moisture wicking, so the polo will not stick to you even in this Dallas heat. Though we're kind of getting it cool down a little bit, but it's still up there. We're not in fall yet. Perfect for a combo for a day on the move. They'll look clean, but they use the comfort of an elastic waistband. With fall in full swing everywhere except for Dallas, what better item to prepare for the season than adding one of their amazingly soft performance hoodies? They are the softest item they have, and you'll never want to take them off. So use the code DLSSTARS20 on roback.com for a generous 20% off on your first order. That is spelled RHOBACK.com. That's 20% off all polos, hoodies, and shorts with the code DLSSTARS20. Make sure to check them out, and they'll have you ready for whatever travels you have.
Man, on the button again, Sam.
Classic.
Let's talk about game time. Everybody that is a sports fan loves going to live events, but it can also be things like comedy shows, theater, concerts. It doesn't just have to be sports. Game Time is your answer to getting the best tickets possible. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. One of the great aspects is all-in pricing. Toggle this feature to show the total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout. Plus, you get seat views, a panoramic view from the seat that you want to buy in the app before you pull the trigger and buy it, so you know exactly what you're getting. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code DLLS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code DLLS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Sam, what time is it?
Game time. Oh, nice. From the top row.
We have a live
back out
audience
there. I love
From
it.
the bleachers.
All right, back to Ryan. And it's not just because our producer is from Boston, although that certainly helps. But we have, on the Dallas Stars podcast, talked an awful lot about Jim Montgomery, Jeremy Swayman, Cam Neely, Don Sweeney, David Pastrnak, Brad Marchand. The list goes on and on. I know this is not your first year covering the Bruins, but this has been a particularly juicy. Luddy used to, when he was playing, would eat his pregame meal, watch, what was it, All My Children?
All My
You betcha.
Children.
Erica
And then
Kane,
he'd take his nap.
Reruns.
Susan Lucci.
The Bruins are the NHL soap opera right now. And I, as a team broadcaster, I don't know what you're comfortable saying, but it has been an eventful first couple of months.
Yeah, I mean, starting with the Swayman drama in camp, which I think played out a lot longer than a lot of us thought. When they open up training camp, you figure, okay, typically, when they've had a holdout or a guy who's not quite signed yet, it takes a day or two into camp and then it's done. And the fact that it dragged out as long as it did, I think surprised a lot of people. And, I was sitting in that press conference when Cam Neely, threw out the 64 million reasons why he would be in camp line, and thought, well, okay, you could kind of feel all the reporters sit up a little straighter. It's like, ooh, here we go. But it was, I'm glad they got it done. They ended up at a number that I think most people thought they would be at. Turned out it was, the exact same deal that they made down here as well.
About a week later without any drama at all.
Yeah, amazing how that worked. But that was a lot of the talk, was that, Swayman's agent maybe wanted to set the market, and apparently he did, because 8.25 has become a very popular number. Linus Ullmark got 4 times 8.25 up in Ottawa now. So, it ultimately worked out. It was good that they got it done before opening day. They made the announcement the morning we were getting on the flight to go down to Florida to get ready, 2 days before the opener. And Swayman did his press conference and then ran right on the plane. He's been what you'd expect so far. The team in front of him has not always been great defensively, and they're continuing to build on that. But I think everybody in Boston's glad that they finally got that done, because he's a special kind of player. He's going to be good for this team for a long time.
He was the major focus of one of the episodes of the Amazon behind the scenes series that was really great. If you haven't seen it yet, it's more unfiltered than we've seen, especially from an NHL doc in a long time, because usually it's pretty tame. A lot of stuff is sort of carefully curated. This one was more raw, which is, I think, what we all like better. Did you learn anything from the Swayman episode where they really highlighted him that you guys in Boston didn't already know?
Not too much. I mean, I having a chance to be around him a little bit. He's a really good guy, as a lot of hockey players are. I mean, I was glad that he got to showcase a little bit of that personality. I think he, I asked him about the guitar playing, which I don't think was too much common knowledge up in Boston, but he said, his teammates already knew that side of him, and so he hadn't taken too much guff after it went national. But that was one of the things that really stood out.
Well, if we're talking about contracts, let's talk about the NHL's most fined player in history. Where do you think they are contract-wise with the captain? My
gut would be, and I don't know any.
Does he want to finish a Boston Bruin?
I don't think there's any question about that.
Right.
Listen, he learned at the right hand of Patrice Bergeron for a lot of years. under Zdeno Chara as captain as well. I think there's a lot to be said for the carrying on of the leadership role that went from Chara to Bergeron to Marchand. He takes that very seriously. I would be shocked if he didn't end his career in a Boston uniform. When that is, I don't know.
What do you think the proper length would be?
My guess is it will play out a lot of the way that it did with Bergeron and Krejci and Chara toward the end, where they'll just kind of go year to year. And, you know, they'll figure out a number that they can live with some incentives attached to it. And he can make his decision after every season whether he wants to come back. And I think they'll have him back for as long as he wants, especially given, you know, that he'll, I think, continue to produce.
So you've watched these guys for a long time. Where's his game at now compared to, you know what I'm saying? Like, everybody gets a little further down the road. It changes a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's been difficult early on in the season for him because he had 3 surgeries this offseason. Yeah. Didn't really get a chance to train the way he wanted to in the offseason. And so he was a little bit slow in getting into full practices during training camp. He didn't get a chance to play much in the preseason. One of the games he dressed, he got sick, and 4 minutes in, they sent him back to the locker room. And so I think, you know, he got off to a little bit of a slow start as far as the numbers go. But here in the last few weeks, we've started to see the guy that you'd expect. And, you know, as the team has, you know, kind of been off and on here over the first, 17 games in, you know, I think you've started to see him assert himself more in practices and in games and really, you know, demand more from himself and from his teammates.
What do you see? We just talked about all the drama. You kind of got thrown into it. You just talked about coming in 3 days before. What have you seen from your own perspective has been the biggest drama point? And what do you think is the top priority for this team right now to solve?
I don't, you know what, the drama is, so much of it is from the outside. I mean, listen, I've been part of the Boston media for a long time, and I know how it works. And, you know, they're doing their shows every day. And, you know, whether it's Jim Montgomery needs to go, or, you know, Pasternak's overpaid, or McAvoy's over. I mean, it's just, it's a nonstop churn of that. From the inside, I don't see that. I see a team that hasn't really found itself yet. There were a fair amount of new faces added to this roster this offseason. You know, you got Elias Lindholm, Nikita Zadorov, 2 big signings, but then you've also got Mark Kastelik, who comes in on the trade from Ullmark. You got Korpisalo backing up Swayman. You've got Cole Koepke, who kind of came out of nowhere in training camp and has had a great impact on this team early on. You know, one of the better fourth lines in the league so far this year. You know, and so I think you got to, he's not new to the franchise, but Mason Lohrei being one of your top 6 defensemen and playing full-time in the NHL this year, it's a growing process for him. And we've seen that kind of night in and night out. And so I think they have spent a lot of time here in the first quarter of the season trying to figure out how all that fits together and what their top 6 really looks like, who fits with who, what their power play is supposed to look like, because that has been a struggle throughout the year. The penalty kill has been a struggle. And so I think, you know, Jim Montgomery's thrown a lot of different things at the wall, trying to figure out what his team is, but he preaches about the process. And, you know, he said it again the other day. So the last 2 years, we got off to great starts and we weren't playing in June. This year, we're not where we want to be at the start of the year, but that adversity is going to help us down the road. He thinks this is going to make this team stronger, that ultimately when they do, and they, you know, it feels like here, I mean, they've won 4 of their last 6. You know, it hasn't been perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but it feels like it's coming. And the win last night in St. Louis, you know, for 2 periods, they weren't great, but third period, the leaders took over that game. Pastrnak and McAvoy. Montgomery said it after the game. They weren't going to let the Bruins lose that game last night.
And it was a nice win coming back from a 2-0 deficit. Does that take any of the chatter down? I mean, you mentioned Monty's sort of, it's in his last year of his contract. People know the expectations in Boston. This is not a, you know, we're happy to make the playoffs. This is a team that's unhappy to not be in the final.
Right.
And that's the expectation, even though their roster is changing and there's some young guys on it. I'm not going to ask you if you think Monty's going to be fired, because we already did a whole segment about coaching yesterday with the hot seat. But what's the temperature of the Bruins fan right now? Are they frustrated with the seemingly nonstop sort of, Monty calling out Pasta? He did it in the playoffs last year, but then in the regular season, the incident with Marchand on the bench, they said, you guys are too sensitive, chill out, we're hockey players, we're fine. But this is a constant theme. I mean, is there more patience with Monty from Boston fans than we're hearing?
There's not patience from Boston fans about much of anything. Again, sports radio is a big business up there, and you got to do a show every day. And so, what are they talking about? And so, I haven't seen what they're talking about today, but I'm assuming that things have calmed a little bit today after the win last night, but maybe not. Ultimately, I think, the organization has not been quick to pull the trigger on making major moves like that. The front office has been very stable. The coaching has been over the years very stable. You mentioned it's the last year of Jim Montgomery's contract. He addressed that on day one of training camp. Don Sweeney addressed it on day one of training camp. They said they've had discussions about an extension. Hasn't been announced yet if that's going to happen or not. But I think Montgomery he seems to be very well respected among the players. I think the leaders of the team are carrying his message forward. And I think, they've all said, whether it's, Marchand, McAvoy, Pastrnak, that when the team's going through tough times, it's not about the coach. Pastrnak pointed it out a week or so ago. He got benched in the third period, in a game that the Bruins were winning. And he took that on his shoulders and said, you know what, I made a bad play, made a bad turnover. Monty's doing what he needs to do. There's accountability in this room, and it doesn't matter who you are. And, I think that message has gotten through to the players. And, it's just a question of, can they get that consistent success at this point? Because that's what's been missing.
See, that's the one thing that I do appreciate about Monty, or any coach. He goes out and he holds the best players accountable. Yeah. It's really easy to take your fourth line guy and sit him out, or take your number 5 defenseman and sit him out. And, so he's picking on the right guys. And that does get the attention of the younger guys, because, it's pretty easy for me to be a target now, since he's going after a Modano, Zubov, whatever it is. But the thing, it's how they responded. Right. Like you mentioned Pasta a couple of times. Since he got sat down, his last 4 games, he's getting like 23 minutes a game. He's got, 5 points in those 4 games, a goal, I think, and 4 assists. So it almost, sometimes it's like we sit there and we go, damn it, we're proving the coach right again. It's one of those kind of things. And the coaches go, but again, I think that's what you have to do.
Well, Pastrnak, you mentioned, he got challenged during the playoffs last year. Yep. And, it's kind of same thing. Like he said, Monty's right. I need to be better. And not a lot of stars necessarily are willing to say that when their coach calls them out. Pastrnak, to last night, you could see, he had gone 7 games without a goal, which is kind of uncharted territory for a guy like that. And, he was putting up points, he was getting assists, but there were a couple of games where it looked like he was deferring shots that he otherwise would take. Boy,
that doesn't sound familiar, does it?
There's a lot that sounds familiar. There's a lot.
There's a lot of parallels with the Stars, amazingly.
And he admitted it. And he said, and so last night, I think the Bruins had 10 shots in the first period. He had 7 of them. They weren't all great shots, but he was, bound and determined. He was going to put the puck on net last night. And as I said, once they got into the third period, he made a great play, steals one in the neutral zone, sets up the first goal to get them on the board and get them back within one. And then he ends up getting the game winner after he chunked a one-timer wide. It came right back around to him like 5 seconds later, and he about tore a hole in Jordan Binnington to get that puck in. Binnington,
which no Stars fan will be upset about.
Yeah, Binnington he got almost all of it. It still found its way across the goal line. So Pastrnak is, he is a real competitor. And when Montgomery called him out, and as I said, he benched him in that third period. He took that to heart and said, not going to happen again.
those kind of things happened when Monty was coaching the Stars too, including the famous culture of mediocrity call out. I didn't name anybody specifically. Up next, let's talk a little bit about the Stars as they get ready to face the Bruins here on the DLLS Dallas Stars podcast.
All right, let's talk about Sleeper. Sleeper is the best fantasy league platform out there, period. But they are also more than that. You can put your puck knowledge to the test by picking whether your favorite or least favorite player will have more or less in their projected stats each day, each week, whatever you want to do. So tonight, I have Alex Ovechkin getting 1 goal closer to Gretzky's record at home against Toronto. If he does score a goal tonight, you get 2.2 times your payout. So do it now with your money. Sleeper keeps you in the loop with instant alerts for breaking news, major injuries, so you can stay ahead of the game and keep track of league updates in real time. If you think you have what it takes, download the Sleeper app and use the code DLLS Stars to get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Currently operational in over 25 states. Make sure you check out Sleeper today.
All right, let's talk about Empire Today. With Empire Today, you get shop-at-home convenience, the right product for your needs, quick and professional installation, and a low price guarantee. Empire Today is the best place to get new flooring, so of course they do have copycats, but Empire can't be beaten on quality, service, or speed, so competitors advertise low-quality products that Empire simply wouldn't carry. Empire wouldn't and won't promise the lowest prices because anyone who does that is putting flooring in your home that they wouldn't put in theirs. Couple of great features. Look, shopping for floors at a big box store can be very frustrating because you might talk to someone today who was in plumbing, like Sam yesterday. Flooring is all Empire Today does. They live and breathe flooring, so you can be confident you're getting honest, upfront advice. Plus, they service their own warranties. If an issue does arise, just call Empire. They will service them themselves. You won't have to track down a manufacturer's phone number. Schedule a free in-home estimate today. All listeners can receive a $350 discount when using the promo code DLLS. Restrictions apply. See empiretoday.com/DLLS for details.
I just want to say, Ryan may be wondering why you guys are always doing the reads and everything. I can actually speak in sentences and I can read and things like that, but it's only if it's related to booze or liquor or a cooler for the booze and liquor.
Those are the endorsements
we give him one ad read, and it's a liquor one.
And I'm supposed to drink during it.
Yeah.
So.
Ryan, you were just talking about the playing your best in June, right? And playing your well in the playoffs. We just talked to assistant coach Steve Spott this morning at practice, and that was something that they talked about, is that they want to hit the ground at the right times, right? So it's not always the worst thing to not be playing your best in October and November. And especially, we just looked at the standings at the practice rink today. If the Winnipeg Jets have been the best team in the NHL, right? If they playoffs started today, they'd be playing the Edmonton Oilers. So there's no easy matchups.
Wouldn't that be a great
The Stars last year get the hardest road to the final of pretty much any team in the West, and they are 1 point away from the President's Trophy. So what is it like today in the parity of today's NHL? Is it easier to kind of just play your best, at least at the right time, and just keep yourself in the playoff loop versus trying to win a President's Trophy and get swept in the first round?
Yeah, I think you have to just let the process play out. Montgomery is preaching process. And in fact, I was over at practice right before I came here, and Charlie McAvoy had a T-shirt on that says committed to the process. And that's what it has to be, and listen, you're not going to go out and try to lose games in October and November because, we don't want to have the best record in the, at Thanksgiving. We'd rather be better in April and May. You just have to be what you are. And, but I think there is something to be said across all sports that championship teams usually go through some level of adversity to get there, whether that's in previous years or in the season where they win the championship, that, you deal with injuries, you deal with disappointments, you go through stretches where the game isn't there, and how do you find it? And you can point to the Bruins here in the last couple of years and say, they had terrific regular season, best regular season of all time. And they got to the playoffs and they flamed out in the first round. Why is that? Is it because, you went through the entire season and you forgot what it is to lose 2 games in a row? And you don't know how to pull yourself out of that? You forgot how to, energize a team when the game isn't there, or when you're playing against a good opponent who's got your back against the wall. I think that's what that means to me. And I think it's what that means to this team, is that, it's not the worst thing in the world to go through this. You want to fix it as quickly as you can, but you're also going to need to remember how you fixed it, because it will break again somewhere along the way.
I think that the Bruins organization too has been around since God was a cowboy. I mean, like Montreal and all these other things. You know that you just have to be playing the right hockey at the right time of the year. You don't have to finish. And we'd like to do that and maybe get an easier opponent, but playoff time, there is no such thing as an easy opponent
in this division too.
Yeah.
I mean,
pick your poison.
Well, generally, I mean, you can go into the season and there's 4 teams you expect that are going to be there at the end of the year, right? You got Florida, you got Toronto, you got the Bruins. I mean, it's there's not an easy matchup to be had there. And so, the Bruins have gotten ousted by Florida the last 2 years. Florida goes on to win the Cup last year. That's what you kind of expect will happen again. It's going to be those 4 teams likely going into the playoffs out of this division, unless, one of those teams that we've been waiting for years for is Buffalo going to make the next step? Is Detroit going to make the next step? Ottawa, are they going to come forward? Are we going to leave Montreal out of that conversation for now?
Yeah,
but I think you are.
Yeah,
unfortunately,
yeah,
so.
I think we
year.
probably will.
We mentioned the playoffs. Toronto Maple Leafs, Boston Bruins. It feels like it's going to be every year for the next 20 years. Is that the number one rival for the Boston Bruins right now and overall?
Yeah, I mean, in my heart, it is. It's always been Montreal. The Canadians have been down for so long now that those games just don't have that same feeling in the building anymore. When Toronto was in Boston a few weeks ago on a Saturday night, hockey night in Canada, it was a playoff atmosphere in that building. We've seen Florida a couple times already, and there's no doubt that there's a big rivalry from the playoffs there. The Bruins tried to solve some of those rivalries on opening night, and the Panthers weren't biting, and that's a big reason why the Panthers won that game. Is Bruins started taking penalties, chasing Tkachuk around the ice, and it did not work out well for them. But to me, from the Bruins fan perspective, I think it's Toronto, no question about it.
Luds, that's an interesting discussion because we've always talked about that in Dallas, going, who are the Stars' biggest rivals? And I feel like it's more, maybe it's because Dallas is so much further away from other NHL cities that there's not a natural geographic rival like the Rangers and the Islanders or, Boston, Montreal forever and ever. It always felt like it was whomever they played most frequently in the playoffs. Yeah. Right? There was a brief time where it was Anaheim. And the Stars were in the Pacific Division, but they played the Ducks in the playoffs and lost in 6. That was, 2014?
Yep.
But then it was the Preds because of a couple playoff series and Winter Classic. It was the Blues because of a couple of second-round series.
That's what I would have said. I would say St. Louis or Edmonton.
But when you were playing for the Stars, it was Colorado, Detroit, Edmonton, you played a whole bunch. Yeah. It was the playoff teams. It wasn't so much the regular season teams, was it?
Yeah. I mean, it's the teams that you play. You seem to play every year in the playoffs, and for us, it seemed like that year in '99 and a couple of years prior to that, we were always playing Edmonton, and I think there's still some holdovers here from watching back in the day, if they can still remember. That it's still because it's the Edmonton Oilers, and now for other reasons, I think it still is going to be now because of what's happened. A lot of it's just most recent.
Yeah.
So, I was going to say, where's Montreal? Because I remember those were and the best part about it was there was this one little establishment in Montreal and Chez Paris, and it was, we'd go there for lunch all the time, like day before games, sometimes during games. But there'd be buses that, all the fans would jump on buses and they'd get, 3-4 buses that go up there. That's their first stop is the Chez. And I won't throw anybody else into the bus, but we'd be sitting in there.
He was about to.
Here would go the line. There'd be a line of all these Boston guys come walking in the door. And we know the Boston guys when they all get together. I mean, they travel well, and it was something. And they would sit right there until they went to the Forum, and it was the big game. And a lot of those, they made sure they were on Hockey Night in Canada.
It's funny you say about Boston travel, because this summer we were traveling to go visit my wife's family in upstate New York, and we flew in through Syracuse, and there was some big softball. I know that would perk up yours. There's some big softball tournament, bunch of older guys. We were at this restaurant to eat before we had to get on the plane and leave the next day, and they were from Boston. You could hear it, right? It was like our producer's accent. And I said something about the Stars. He goes, "Oh, the Stars. Oh, how's Tyler Seguin doing? He still sucks." Like they never let it go. And it's whenever you guys will see it tomorrow night at the AAC, but it's always fun to see how well teams that travel well do, and Boston's one of those.
Don't you
It's
think
amazing.
Ryan should have been playing that little bit we did about pronouncing teams for Ryan?
Oh my goodness! But he's lived
the
in
Boston
Massachusetts
ones.
forever. We did a bit.
Look at him scrambling.
He's going quick. John's going to try to write this down.
He's got it. He's on it. He's going to
we
nail
did
them all, though.
a video bit for, I believe it was for Twitter, TikTok, all the social media platforms, and John wrote down a bunch of names of Massachusetts towns.
Oh, yeah.
Are we going to
And
put him
then-
under the gun here?
And
think
then
he is.
I think so. He's
Uh-oh.
furiously
get him,
scribbling
though.
down. And so
Yeah, he better.
he on camera put Lud, Sam, our host for our other shows, for Cowboys and Rangers and Mavericks, and had them try to come up with some of these names. And they butchered all of them.
Yeah.
And-
I got one.
That's barely true.
I got one.
When I first moved up there in 2000, I had to go through kind of boot camp because I was doing talk radio, and it's like you can't screw these things up. When callers call in, it's like you got to make sure you can pronounce the name of the town right. So yeah,
Here
I
you
know
go.
exactly
Here he
what-
Here you go.
He's going to come in.
All right.
And he's going to hold up the thing. All right.
You want me to hold it? You want me to hold it?
No.
You'd have
So,
to go
I can
closer
say
than
forever.
that.
So, all right. So we've got Situate is the first one. Then we've got Leominster, not Leominster, but Leominster. It is
My
not.
favorite one.
It is not Peabody. It is Peabody.
Now,
Cochituate,
This isn't fair.
Worcester or Worcester, and Swampscott. It's not Swamp. It's not Swampscott.
I,
there.
I,
Of course
I
he's
don't
gonna
give
get
him
it
6
right.
for 6. I give him 7 for 6 because he actually gave you,
You got to give you two for
two
Worcester.
options.
Well,
Yeah,
Worcester.
Worcester.
What's the
But wait, don't
Which is
more
exactly
people
what
say
John did.
Worcester?
It's so most people would pronounce it Worcester if you pronounce the R. If you don't, it's Worcester. But some of the locals pronounce it Worcester.
Worcester.
Vista?
See, Nyland,
Yeah,
obviously
yeah.
you know Chris Nyland.
Knuckles, yeah.
Yeah, Nuck. So it to me because he was my whoopee, and we were the only couple Americans at the time. Do we know what a whoopee is?
No, I have no idea, but I think it's great.
You don't know what a whoopee is?
I really don't.
It's the little small guy in Star
What's
Wars.
a whoopee?
No, not a Wookiee.
Yeah, a whoopee for little kids. They get a little whoopee. They get
It's a blankie.
a blanket.
Okay,
Yeah.
A
that I
blankie.
know.
Okay. Jesus.
Never heard of Whoopi.
You had a-
looking at me
you-
with
were
some
you a
Mr.
big-
Mom.
You
I
were a
still
big-
have my
you were a
original
blankie
one.
That's
guy,
a
I could
long
tell.
time ago.
It is.
What?
We lost you?
Just telling you we have to break.
Is that all
before
that is?
48.
Yeah. See, they're holding my.
Do you
want
to break now and
Let's
talk
do
about
that.
Whoopies
I thought
later?
he was holding up a different
Up
finger.
next,
If
we
you
are
were
going to hit Ryan and the panel with some NHL news and notes as we continue here on the DLLS Dallas Stars podcast. You can't prove I almost said post game, but I was thinking it. All right, let's talk about the DLS Die Hard program. Why? Because it is the best way to elevate your fandom with DLS to the top level. One of the things that you can't get if you're not a diehard is our special video on demands. That's the ones where maybe Luddy is doing a breakdown that's only on the diehard level. You want to see his expert analysis. Now, some of it is on Twitter, but all of it is available if you're a diehard. In addition to that, well, the guy with the shirt just walked away. You want to come back here, John, for just a second? Our fancy model, you got to use this camera here. Stand right in front of me, okay? He's got a brand new Mike Madonna 8-bit Stars DLLS shirt. It is fantastic. He's also trying to show
gonna
the Boston
double
Bruins
it.
shirt. But this is a shirt that you can get, not that one, which you get a free promo code for a DLS
John, we just had a
shirt
meeting about
each
this kind
year
of stuff this
you
morning.
sign up to be a diehard. And it doesn't bother me because I was a New England native. I grew up a Bruins fan. It's okay. So whether it's Sam's writing, Sean's writing, it's the Mavs, Rangers, Cowboys, TCU, you cannot get a better level of coverage than being a diehard. And of course, we aren't going to do it today because it's a Wednesday and we have Ryan here, but we will do another version of Luddy's damn Discord channel, and you can only get access to the DLS Discord if you're a diehard. All right, so now we go to our NHL news and notes segment, which is some of it, and Ryan, forgive us because this is carryover from a couple days ago because we had so much going on and things that we were talking about, and we got into a 2-segment debate about the NHL hot seat and who's going to go first, and we had a real interesting discussion about Jim Montgomery probably not being let go this year during the season because it doesn't feel like the Bruins are an interim coach kind of franchise right now or in a position. You never know. But those darn Winnipeg Jets. They just keep winning. And they did it again last night.
Good game.
Good game,
Really good
and they
game.
did it in Madison Square Garden against the Rangers. Rangers kept punching back. It was close, but first team in NHL history to win 15 of its first 16 games. We've seen them play last Saturday in Winnipeg. They are the real deal. They are a very good hockey team right now.
I haven't had a chance to see him yet. And it's funny, you get kind of laser focused in this job on like, what's up next?
Because you don't have time to worry about the other teams.
No, the only thing I know is we got to go to Winnipeg in December. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Good time of the year.
Yeah, it's a great time.
Yeah.
They're going to
Beautiful.
make the trek. I think we go through like Winnipeg, Calgary, Edmonton. We're going to do them all in one fell swoop in the middle of December. So
I think,
looking
isn't
forward to that.
Winnipeg, have you been there?
No.
I think
no,
Mike
'cause
Heiko was telling me that
they were not in the AHL when I was in Texas. The Manitoba Moose hadn't come in yet.
Right. Because I think Mike was saying they connect like all their buildings there so that you
Oh,
just
yeah,
don't,
yeah.
A lot of the-
you don't have to go outside.
A lot of the
at all.
Canadian cities do that, and it's
Underground.
phenomenal
Yeah.
to be able to.
And you can get lost down there.
Yeah.
They have
If you stop
elevated
at the
tunnels in
wrong
Des
place
Moines
first, you get
right? Because I
lost
was there
coming
to
back.
play the Iowa Wild, and we're in Des Moines going, hotel over streets, connecting.
Yeah.
Because that cold winter wind is no joke.
But Winnipeg, I watched that game last night, and they're just winning in every way. Like every time you watch their game against the Stars, they had everything rolling, right? Last night they didn't have everything rolling. Kyle Connor was playing well. They had a couple guys that were playing well, but every time they broke down, Hellebuck just made that save, and he made that save huge in the third period 2 different times. And they are just a team right now that I'm wondering, like we were just talked about, are they the team that's going to come out of the gates and be incredible, maybe even win the President's Trophy or a division and lose in the first round again?
It could be. I mean, again, it's great to be playing that well. I mean, you're banking points like crazy. So if you go into a tailspin later on in the year, you're still in good shape. But, you never know how that's all going to play out over the course of the season. And, I mean, an 82-game season, a lot happens. And so you might win 15 out of 16, but couple of injuries and suddenly you're dropping 8 out of 10, and people are wondering what happened to that team from the first couple months of the year.
Well,
Be interesting down the stretch what they do with Hellebuck.
In terms of workload?
Yeah.
I mean, he probably shouldn't play 70
But you
games.
say that, but he's done it every single year.
But they've also lost in the first round.
Yeah, exactly.
If he doesn't do it.
No, I don't disagree with you. I think workload's important. It's just that Hellebuck seems to be cut from the old school cloth, the Marty Brodeurs, where he's going to play 65 to 70 games, right? Vasilevsky would always play a ton. I think Thatcher Demko wore down last year.
The
and that
difference
was a problem
now,
too, and
I
of course
think,
he's
with
hurt.
that Winnipeg team is their 4 lines, their depth, and their D. And so now you don't have to ride that guy, and you may want to say, we know you're that piece, but now we've got a supporting cast for you. So the Rangers, though, I don't know. Zibanejad doesn't look the same right now for whatever reason. I think Miller, defenseman, I think they want to sign, doesn't look right.
That guy in goal is pretty good, though.
Huh?
That guy in goal is pretty good.
NHL
That guy
first
in goal is
star of the
pretty
league.
good.
Man, he was good last night, too. He had
Think
some.
about this. Before last night's game, he had a .33 goals against average and a .989 save percentage in the 3 starts last week. So he was the number 1 star for week 5, 3-0, stopped 88 of 89. It was only the Rope Hintz goal that was just after the Stars' last power play ended that dented what could have been a perfect 3-for-3 week. He's that good. We wanted to ask you, we were talking Star stuff. We always like to get the outside impression of Dallas because we cover the team. You're looking at the Bruins constantly. You just wonder, when you get away from the Stars bubble, get away from the Bruins, what's the viewpoint from outside looking in?
I love the roster they've got here. I really do. I mean, Ottinger's a terrific goaltender. They've built some really good talent here. From, you mentioned Wyatt Johnston earlier. I love his game. I love what he brings to the table, not just because of his name, but no, really, top to bottom, it's a roster that's built to contend, and you got to give them a lot of credit for what they've put together here. I mean, we got a chance to see them firsthand up in Boston, and they were really impressive. I hadn't had a chance to see them in person before. And they played really well against the Bruins. I'm looking forward to that's why, I'm hoping if the Bruins are, finding their A game, it's a good time to test against one of the better teams in the West here.
That was the first time we saw the power play come together, I think. Was
scored 3 times.
Well, that's
they've
been
been
kind of the
awful
key.
before that.
So, I mean, the
and
Bruins,
they were taking a lot of penalties at the time, the Bruins.
The Bruins have given up 3 power play goals in a game 4 times this year.
Ooh.
It had happened happened twice in the last 436 games before that. Toronto did it. They had like 4 power play goals for the year. We went up to Toronto. Toronto scores 3 power play goals. Nashville was dead in the water when we went there, and same thing. I mean, it was even last night. St. Louis had a couple of power play goals. They end up losing the game, but their power play hadn't scored a goal at home yet this year, and only had 4 goals in 14 games or whatever was coming in.
Luddy, they went right to the front of the net, and they had a couple of backdoor tap-ins because of getting to those hard areas.
And what were the Stars, like 1 for 21 at the time they played the Bruins?
Yeah.
No, you're right. It's
But the key, I remember somebody said the key to that was because Boston was taking a lot of penalties. They were going to get some opportunities, and they were going to score a couple goals that night.
They've been shorthanded more than anybody in the
guy
league.
that said that?
Who said that? Was that the guy with the really nice hair?
Who was that guy?
Yeah, I think that was that guy.
Really charismatic guy.
The guy that doesn't have to do any commercial reads.
Played in
What's
the
that guy's
NHL.
name again? Yeah. Old guy.
But yeah, that's been the problem is they've been penalized more than any team in the league, and it's you're just putting yourself in.
Do you think it was out of frustration, or sometimes it's over try or out of over try? But
yeah, I think there's been some of that. Some of it's just been careless stick penalties in the offensive zone have seemed to bite them a lot. Guys who are trying to make a play but just aren't in the right position to make the play, and sometimes you gotta live to fight another day instead of reaching out, hooking a guy, or you try to lift a stick and you get it up into the guy's shield and you end up sitting. So there's been some of that, and some of it's just positionally.
There's a guy we didn't talk about, McAvoy. How do you think he's been this year?
He's been solid defensively. The offensive numbers haven't been there yet.
Does he over trying to force those numbers, or do you think he needs to get up more? Or?
Some of the criticism of him tends to be that he doesn't shoot enough. Last night,
heck of a shot last night.
He's got a great shot, and he's got a great ability to get the shot through from the blue line. He can make that extra subtle move left or right and find a lane to get it through to the net. They've had him quarterbacking the first power play up until recently, and it just hasn't been working. The whole unit has been kind of out of sync. And so they tried Hampus Lindholm there last night, and then Hampus got hurt in the first period, and so McAvoy ended up having to take it back over. But he scored a huge goal last night. He didn't have a point in, I want to say it was 12 games going into that. So we talked to him on the post game immediately after the game. I asked him, how good did that goal feel? He's like, I'm not going to lie, I really needed that one.
Mm-hmm.
I think his confidence was a little shaken as far as his offense goes, but he's still been solid defensively. But I think, and I think I mentioned this earlier, both he and Pastrnak kind of took that leadership last night to another level and said, we're not going to lose this game in the third period. And that's what people are hoping to see out of him.
Yeah.
He's not good. We talk about it all the time. He's probably not going to win a Norris because that's become an offensive players award. And he's not going to be an 80 or 90 point defenseman, but he's going to give you 45 or 50 points. And he's a solid defenseman that you can really rely on in the postseason.
Yeah, it seemed when Monty came in there, part of his structure system, if you want to call it that, was in the offensive zone. There would be something happening, or where guys would start coming out one side of the ice, but the offside defenseman was always going down to the far post. He was always getting those guys involved, and so it created issues coverage-wise when that happens, especially if you play man-to-man sometimes, that it creates problems. And I throw that in there every once in a while.
In case you're listening, Stars coaching staff.
But it created problems, and I haven't seen a ton of games, but it doesn't seem like the activation is there in the offensive zone, whether the guys aren't doing it or maybe it's just something he's pulled back on.
Yeah, no, it's something that he still preaches and still wants to see. I think that's been an issue here over the course of the first 15, 16, 17 games is when do you go, when do you not, making sure that the coverage is there so that you're not giving up odd man rushes the other way. They've had some issues where even on the power play, like they gave up a 2-on-0 on a power, a shorthanded break at the end of a period one time because the D tried to pinch in and tried to go and they didn't get the right coverage and suddenly it ended up going the other direction. And so, you have to do it, but it's got to be responsible.
So there's a couple of things before we run out of time. Yeah. Lars Eller was traded by the Penguins to the Capitals for a couple draft picks. I'm not surprised based on
that'll fix him.
He's back.
Obviously, the Penguins have to do some things. we could spend more time on it, but we'll move past it. I just flipped up the Bruins travel schedule or game schedule. You have a pretty easy travel schedule the rest of November. A lot of home games, Islanders at home or on the road. You're not going very far. That Winnipeg trip that you have, by the way, now I know Chicago's not that far of a flight from Boston, but they have a back-to-back at the beginning of December where they play Detroit at home and then they're in Chicago the next night, because that makes perfect sense. But that Winnipeg game, December 10th, is the first of 5 games on the road where they go Winnipeg, Seattle, Vancouver, Calgary, Edmonton. So you get the full Western Canada and Pacific Northwest experience in a 2-week stretch. I'm guessing that later in the year when you get to go to California, you'll be looking forward to that trip.
We've got like 5 days in LA. It's great.
Beautiful.
We're gonna between LA and Anaheim, we got a nice long I think like a 3-day break in there. So yeah, that'll be nice.
Those are great places to go to games too.
Yeah.
Very
By the
easy.
way, at the late part of March. So when you've been sick of winter in Boston and you get to go to California for a week and a half, you'll be very happy about that.
I'm not upset about that. I think Vegas is on that trip too, which is terrible.
They'll see all those guys out there living in Boston, playing in Boston out on the beach. You're going to look like a bunch of Casper ghosts out there running around down at Newport with a couple days off. Yeah.
Hey, I just want to say, Ryan brought up something that I thought was really interesting. That you said and whispered to me that there's some parallels with these two teams right now, right? There's two teams that haven't quite gotten to where they believe they can get. You said it's a measuring stick game for Boston. This is a huge game for Dallas too. This is not a looking over because Boston's struggling. The Stars have a lot to figure out, and they believe that they have just turned a corner. They, I think Steve Spott said it today. They touched the stove and realized they can get burnt. They're not automatically going to be the Western Conference finalists. What are you expecting to see from this game?
Expecting? I don't know. I really don't. What I'm hoping to see is another effort like we saw in the third period last night. The teams, talking to Jim Montgomery earlier today, they've had a few different times early on in this season where it looks like they have figured it out. I mentioned the game against Toronto at home a few weeks ago. That looked like, okay, that's the team that we expect to see. And then they came out, I think, the next game, and they lost 2-0 to Philly at home. And it was like, that's not the team that we're hoping to see. So is last night a springboard forward that, okay, now this team's got the shot of confidence that they've been looking for, and now we start to see that more on a consistent basis. They haven't been able to follow up an effort like that with another one yet. And that's what he's hoping to see.
Has the Tyler Seguin thing wore off in Boston yet?
No.
They'll still ask him
No.
every time
Like
he
I
comes.
said,
Never
the
will.
guys I bumped into in Syracuse brought it up, and it's been since 2013.
I mean, people, were still chanting "Thank you, Kessel" when he would come back. And Sagan's long gone. I mean, it was, that will never go away.
So last thing for me, and we do have to wrap it up, but if you're a Stars fan and you're from Texas, you know that the culinary cuisine, besides Tex-Mex, is barbecue down here. Well, Ryan, it would be a crime if I didn't bring it up before, since we have you on the show. You're a bit of a barbecue guy on the side. It's like a hobby of yours.
Yeah.
Smoker, sauces, what's your thing?
Yeah. So my wife, I don't know, probably about 7-8 years ago, asked, she was looking for something to get me for my birthday. Said, "Do you want a smoker?" And I'm like, I don't know how much I'll use it. But I said, okay, yeah, let's go for it. She buys me a smoker, and the first time I use it, I'm like, yeah, I'm going to use this thing a lot. And so, yeah, I mean, during the season, I don't get a chance to cook a whole lot with all the travel and the games, but I imagine that's how I'll spend a lot of the summer. But yeah, I'm, ribs, brisket, beef ribs, like all that stuff, pulled pork. I've kind of been working for years to try to perfect the craft. And for those of you who are on Twitter, hashtag RJ's Roadside Barbecue, you can find a lot of my pictures of stuff that I tweet out to the fans. So
You give them recipes too, or no?
I'm willing to share my recipes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
It's not state secrets?
No, it's like, you know what? Listen, it's not just the recipe. It's the time you put into it, the care you put into it that makes the difference.
Do you know where you're going for dinner tonight? Yeah.
Have not figured that out
All right.
quite yet.
Is
but-
it going to be Texas
Just so
barbecue?
you know, Tight Ends
I'm-
has a Ludwig sandwich. I just want to get that out there.
Yeah, I'm thinking there's probably going to be brisket involved somewhere.
Yeah, there's some good
figured-
spots.
And
some good
since
spots.
you're down here in Dallas, he's probably not going up towards Plano, Frisco.
What's down here?
It might be
What good
worth the
barbecue
trip,
spots are
though.
down
I'm just
here?
saying.
Oh, I mean,
Slow bone.
Hutchins. I don't know if they're in Dallas, but I know they're fantastic.
Went to Hard 8. There's no Hard 8s down here, right?
Yes, there is.
There is.
Hard 8 is out by Tight Ends.
That's what I would suggest. Hard 8.
You have my permission, not that you need it, to throw that soft squish ball at Ledge.
Throw it.
See if you can even hit
Give
it.
it your best
Kat doesn't
shot.
wanna- she doesn't want to take the lights
Come on,
out.
Pat
It's a shame we
Benatar.
only get to come down here once a year.
I
We have
know.
to-
But at least you that would
Of all that, the thing that's going to break is my laptop.
By the way, so
Not
if you're
even
not
part of
watching
it.
on YouTube, if you're listening to this, the ball made it perfectly. Luddy caught it. He then just aired it and dropped it right on top of Katya's head. But in the process, he almost elbowed Sam's laptop and his drink off the table. And this is why we have so much
That's how we
fun.
do it here.
It wasn't that long ago where you didn't even play every team twice, once at home and away. I love that fact about the league.
I do and I don't. I don't love
Sam's
the fact
done.
that there's division
Sam's
teams that
gone
you
off
only
to get
play
the
3
first aid
times
kit.
a year.
I don't like that either.
because of the impact that has on. We play Montreal 3 times this year. That's
fact that-
that's not right.
Already?
No, with 3 times for the
Oh,
entire season.
I could rent it on this for hours. The fact that we have a divisional playoff format and you don't play your division rivals the same number of games in the course of a regular season is criminal.
Yeah.
And the thing is that you could easily take a third game from one of the non-division conference opponents, right, and make right.
Yeah.
Because, look, all due respect, the Stars are playing the Sharks 3 times this year. That's great. And based on the Sharks' record, that's probably helpful to Dallas, although they've been tricky
Seattle
for them.
too, right?
You could take the third game away from them and put it against St. Louis
Yeah.
or Colorado, or whichever team's only 3, and have that part balanced.
Yeah.
That would-
I mean, I said Boston and Montreal 3 times is not.
Yeah,
enough.
that's not enough.
It's not enough, and not just because Montreal's down, but
On a side note, did you notice that we kept the Eastern time on the clock for you, just so you feel right?
you know,
home?
I did notice that.
I'm
I was
sure you
I was
did.
like, have I really been here? That
Nobody
long?
wanna
knows
make
how
you
to change the
assimilate.
time.
Yeah.
Which is
They don't know how
weird
to
because
change it.
the other studio, our podcast room, they did change the time.
Our normal director, or whatever the hell he's
Producer.
called.
Eventually you're gonna call him the right thing.
Director.
He
It's
had the little
all-
remote out, and he figured out how to do it.
Listen, the production
I just thought I'd
staff
throw
is
that out
top
there.
notch here. They do way more than just the title that they're given. Trying to give you a little props, but thank you, Katya, very much for
Yes,
helping
thank
John
you,
out
Kat.
today. And Ryan, thank you for joining us
Yes.
this afternoon.
Thanks for having me.
I would imagine that it's probably a little bit warmer here than in Boston, but you know,
Just a little bit.
it's been pretty warm up in the Northeast as well.
Has not been bad at all.
Yeah.
I think and when it has been, we've been on the road somewhere, so not too shabby here though. It's great day to take a walk around
We
downtown.
would have an overcast or rainy day 1 or 2 times a month. And that's when a northern NHL team would come down here in the middle of the season and go, man, we're really looking forward to like 70s. And listen, we haven't had rain in 18, 19 weeks or something like that. So we're glad that we had some sunshine for you.
I appreciate it.
All right. He's Ryan Johnston. He is the play-by-play voice for the Bruins radio broadcast. Ryan, so much a pleasure. Thanks. It's great to see you. It's been a long, long time.
Yeah, we'll
Been
see you
too
tomorrow
long.
at the rink.
Yeah.
And we'll get to see him tomorrow night, Stars and Bruins. We'll have a pregame show at 6:15 right here on DLS. And then, of course, our postgame afterwards. Ryan will probably not see me on the scooter with the bike helmet going back and forth between the rink and the studio. But for Craig Ludwig, Sam Nestle, and of course for Ryan, for Katya and John, I'm Owen. Thanks for joining us. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We'll be back tomorrow for the pregame show right here on DLLS.
We all silly like the mayor.